This is Bedside, a podcast series on a mission to debunk sex. I'm your host, Tatiana, and each week we uncover stories, ideas, and expert information to help guide you on your ever-evolving journey of deep love, relationships, and good sex. Oh, and a little bit of manifestation sprinkled in there too. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bedside podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, I have my guest, Grace Emmons. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I'm so excited to chat with you. So you do energy healing. You are a transformation coach. I mean, when I tell you I was researching your work and I was like, we speak the same language, I was like, get her in this guest seat now, today, yesterday. I brought you a manifestation journal. I was like, I know that we're going to just totally hit it off. So
I can't wait to get into that, by the way. Totally up my alley.
Yeah. And guys, Grace is from Topanga. Well,
yes. I live in
from
Topanga.
many. You live in Topanga from probably many different places.
Yes. Originally from the East Coast, from New Hampshire. And then I've been here in LA for like over 15 years now, and Topanga the last 5.
Amazing. Okay, before we even get into what you do and stuff, can you just tell me how you ended up in Topanga? Because for those of you who are listening who might not know what Topanga is, it's just this gorgeous canyon in the middle of Los Angeles. It's so just healing centric. It almost feels like an oasis outside of LA. So when people end up there, I'm like, please tell us how you got there, because I think secretly that might be my life goal.
Honestly, total manifestation.
Yeah.
I think I used to drive through Topanga Canyon back in my early days when I was still in corporate America. I was in pharma and biotech, and I used to drive up we lived in Santa Monica at the time, and up to Amgen, who I was calling on. And I used to drive through Topanga Canyon, and so I was sort of aware of it. One time went on a hike with my husband, who was then my fiance. And I remember we just kind of romanticized, and we were like, maybe someday in a future life, we would live in Topanga and, when we're older and start our family. And I remember on a day we were out hiking, we went to a open house of a house just for fun. We were had no business of buying a home. We weren't even married yet. I don't even know if we were engaged yet at the time. And we were just kind of playing house and envisioning what it would be like. And then fast forward to, we come back from our wedding. I think it was the week we were back. At this point, we were living in West Hollywood in a little bungalow. And we got back and we're like, okay, we're married. What do we do next? For some reason, we got it in our minds. We're like, we should just look at houses. Let's just start looking. And anyway, long story short, ended up buying a home a month later. Ended up being right before the market went psycho and before COVID and all the things. And people were like, wow, how did you know to buy in 2019? And how did you know to get out of the city and be in Topanga? I'm like, we just felt the pull and we went for it. And it was a big change at the time. And now looking back, I can't imagine being anywhere else. And it feels just so perfect.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love to hear it.
Yeah.
What a magical alignment. And so you're in kind of really this amazing space. I mean, you work with major CEOs. I see you've worked with a couple of celebrities, some really renowned brands that many listeners are aware of, especially in the transformation space. So you really work in that capacity. You work with energy healing. So tell me a little bit more about how you even got into this line of work. What kind of led you here? I'm assuming you were guided here.
Yes, definitely guided. I started following breadcrumbs, I would say, and answering the call, if you will. And for me, what that looked like was first being at a really low point in my life. I think this happens to a lot of us. We end up getting really out of alignment and out of touch with who we really are, what gifts we have within, what we're meant to be doing. We get too focused on who we think we're supposed to be and what we think we should be doing to be successful. I very much fell victim to that. Right out of college, I was in management consulting and then business development with pharma and biotech companies, as I mentioned, literally inking $10 million deals with executives in boardrooms and flying back and forth across the country. And it was this high-powered, sexy career on the outside. But on the inside, my life was just falling apart.
Mm.
I started experiencing anxiety and depression. I felt really drained. I felt really empty. I was in a really toxic romantic relationship at the time. And it felt like my world was falling down around me and I couldn't understand why. And for me, my world shifted when I tried a Reiki session on a whim. I went in because I had a chronic shoulder pain and I thought maybe it could help that. And what I didn't realize was the shoulder pain was actually like a physical manifestation of some much deeper rooted issues, and ultimately had a wake-up call, a true spiritual awakening, brush with the transcendent experience, felt experience of reconnection to God and the divine and oneness. I want to talk more about it, by the way, because I have some ideas of, or a very specific line of discussion that I want to really open up with you on the experience of that and how it's actually similar to what we feel in sex. But anyway, we can let's circle back,
everyone.
Let's circle back to that. Hold tight. And it felt like I glimpsed beyond the veil, if you will, or kind of saw beyond this 3D reality that we're all living in, and suddenly remembered this whole other multi-dimensions beyond what is here and now. Like I remembered the meaning of life and like what it meant to feel alive and what it meant to feel good. And so from that point on, I began to follow the nudges and pulls. It woke up my intuition, my inner guidance, and I began to follow that. And it led me all the way to the work that I'm doing now, which was total 360 from where I thought my life was going to go.
Yeah, crazy. So I've been like kind of having this conversation amongst close friends lately where I feel like a phrase of mine has been around the concept of for what? Like for what and for who am I doing what I'm doing? And sometimes if I ever feel like I'm like hyperextending or whatnot, I'm like, for what? Right? Like it's kind of just a moment of reflection to be like, for what and for who am I hyperextending? And it's kind of just a moment for me to take that personal reflection. But what was your moment like working in, you said it was big pharma, right?
Yeah.
Where you were like, for what? Like, for what am I doing this for? And tell me a little bit more about that point where you were, you know, that tension point. I'm sure you work with a lot of people where you're like, what's that point of tension that we almost need to break through to get to where your soul is really wanting to go?
Yeah.
The shoulds are real, not to cut you off there.
The shoulds are real. And I mean, even going into pharma and biotech from the beginning, I actually went into it because I wanted to help people. I wanted to help. I cared about health and well-being. And I thought it was fascinating what our human body can do and that we can heal ourselves and we can generate life in the woman's womb. Like the intelligence within our own body is magnificent. And I studied bioengineering because of my curiosity about all of that. And of course, I had parents in my ear and people in my ear saying, well, you're really good at math and science. Oh, and you like biology. And so, if you did engineering, you'd surely get a very good job. And if you worked in pharma, you could certainly make a lot of money. And I think at the beginning thought that maybe that was a path to helping people. I remember saying, I want to make medicines that will cure disease, right? But you get very disenchanted when you spend several years. I think I was in that industry for a decade. And the things that you see, I mean, I was selling these programs, which also, to be fair, I would adjust my course as I would go to try to be more and more purpose aligned and values aligned. I ended up at a company that was trying to improve patient outcomes. So creating these programs that sort of wrapped around the drug, if you will, to help give the patient a better experience and ultimately potentially have a better outcome on the therapy. But I was seeing that some of these therapies, like, you know how these pharmaceuticals are discovered, they basically take a chemical, they test it in the body and see what reaction happens. They find a symptom that it affects and they reverse engineer from there. So I found out that actually, like, there are teams at pharmaceutical companies. It's a tactic called disease awareness. They will literally be marketing to us the existence of a disease, which is really a collection of symptoms. that the drug that they found that impacts that disease can heal, right? So they're literally like setting the stage of saying, oh, do you have, this condition that they kind of invented?
Yeah.
Truly. Like I saw this from
based off of the research of like what the chemicals were able to do.
Exactly. So seeing this from the inside and being involved in conversations about, oh, how much money are we going to put into the disease awareness campaign versus to the marketing budget for the drug? It's very disenchanting and it makes you really question, are we doing any good? Are we actually getting to the root of any of this? And I think for myself as well, when I was feeling really stuck and drained within my own self and my own body, at one point I was prescribed Adderall. I was diagnosed with ADHD because I said, I can't focus. I can't get out of bed and do my job. And to be fair, I probably am a high functioning person with a little bit of ADHD.
Likely same.
Yeah. But to jump to medication and pushing pharmaceuticals, I mean, it ended up like throwing my whole system out of whack being on those drugs daily. And what I found out for myself was when I actually healed the root cause, which was a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose, a lack of connection to my own soul and what I came here to do and who I came here to be. When I healed that, I didn't need the Adderall anymore. And so truly it was masking, treating the symptom rather than the root cause.
That's so brilliant. Wow. I love that you're saying that just because I think that applies to so many conditions that sometimes we might easily, and not to knock pharmaceuticals, like they have a purpose and they have a place. And I think Western medicine is great. But I think at the same time, tapping into your intuition about it too and being like, what else can I do maybe in tandem with it or alongside it that could potentially be getting at a deeper root cause, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really, really important message to share.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes it's even maybe you need help from a drug to help get you over a hump. But then, like you said, like what do you need to be doing to actually solve the underlying problem? That's what I try to do. How I try to think about things for myself and with my children's health now is like, what can I be doing without the use of drugs? And what's the right usage of a drug in this situation? Which there are times and places that is very helpful. But we need to always ask that question of, is there something deeper going on? And if so, what am I actually doing to resolve that issue?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about because I think a lot of people listening might find themselves in a place of burnout or find themselves in a place of like, wow, I followed all the shoulds and now I'm here and yeah, maybe I am experiencing symptoms of bigger things, or maybe I'm just experiencing a little bit of discontentedness. Like, oh, shit, I thought I'd be happier once I got here. So I'm kind of curious to just hear a little bit about that. And also, so twofold, hear a little bit about that in terms of the transformation work you do. And in tandem, really, where you see energetic healing playing into maybe exploring that for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the energetic healing, first of all, is a great way of getting to some of those root causes to start off with. Or that's at least what I found. Like there were issues. I mean, if you think of it as, and this is sort of a metaphysical concept, but it's held by many different systems of spirituality and energetics around the world, is that we sprout from the spiritual first. Like we are energy, spiritual essence, right? And then we manifest actually first into like the mental emotional plane and then finally into the physical body. This is like what's taught in Reiki training, for example. We learn about these different energy bodies that make up the totality of who we each are. So when I think of like the burnout I was experiencing, if I trace that back, it was actually the root cause in that spiritual lack of connection to something greater than myself, lack of purpose, lack of meaning, and lack of connection to my truth and my essence. It was sort of being blocked off. You know, you can think of the ego as putting up barriers between that spiritual truth energy, right? That cause blockages. So in terms of how to help people break through when they're feeling stuck or not sure if the path they're on is the right one, this is why I use energy healing in everything I do, why I blend it into coaching that I do with executives. I work with a lot of high-powered professionals, founders, entrepreneurs, we use energy healing because it helps to remove said barriers. Think of it as if you are a light, our essence is a light, and the body or physical manifestation is like the bulb. And our ego and the shoulds and the programming and all the things that we take on through life of what we think we should do, it ends up clouding that bulb. It ends up like distorting. And then, if that happens enough, you can't actually allow that light to shine through. So what the energy healing does is it sort of like polishes that bulb and cleans it so that we get back to the clarity of just what is your light within and what does it look like when it shines through, and really the most magnificent transformation just unfolds from there, quite frankly.
So are you kind of putting together different modalities of energy healing? Is it mostly Reiki? Is it like, I'm very curious, like what are we doing here that's like polishing this exterior?
Well, I have a methodology that I use that was informed by, many different schools of thought. So in my path, I mentioned this awakening experience that I had in a Reiki session. And to me, I think that was more than just me being healed. It was also me reconnecting to this energy and the Reiki itself that was a soul remembrance of, oh, wow, I've been here before. This, like, I know this energy. I know what this is. And so I knew right away that Reiki was going to be fundamental for me, and it has been. But I also first got like a metaphorical PhD in spiritual studies. I studied astrology with Deborah Silverman. I studied Kabbalah at the Kabbalah Center. I read like every self-help book, spiritual laws of the universe, like all the things, all the podcasts. And then I actually went back to school and got a real master's degree in clinical psychology. Wow. So I have really drawn on all of the esoteric, the spiritual, and even what we know from mindset work, positive psychology, transformational work within the context of Western psychology, and really blended all of that into the methodology that I use, which I'm happy to give a little talk through of what that is. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think so. Just kind of like broad strokes.
Yeah, broad strokes.
That might look like.
We start with inspired vision, which might sound very obvious. I mean, you're into manifestation. I think sometimes people get actually hung up on this. They say either, well, what if I don't know what I want? Okay, great. Then you need to spend some time envisioning. And it's not even just visioning. It's really more than that. It's feeling into the energy of what it is that your soul is calling. And we use tools like energetic work, guided visualization, guided meditations to help someone who maybe has trouble, or maybe they don't know what that vision is they want for themselves. And so I have tools to actually help draw it out, right? It's like drawing out your heart's desire from within because it already exists. It's already there. And many people actually do know what it is that they want. They're just afraid to claim it.
Yeah.
So, it's easy to say, oh, I don't even know what I would want. Or they say, well, I have a vision of this life and I'm a mom and I work on my own schedule and I have this lovely husband. And they're like, but I don't know how I would get to that because, X, Y, Z. So we try to first, we don't worry about the limitations. We don't worry about the how. We just focus on the what and the feeling of it. Then we dive into self-discovery. And I use a range of tools for this with my clients, anything from strengths and values assessments, personality assessments, and astrological charts and human design to begin to uncover who you came here to be. And it's so empowering to know yourself deeply. I don't think that we're really taught how to know ourselves, right? And when you can begin to understand, oh, there's like reasons why you are the way you are. And you can begin to give yourself permission for the ways that you don't act the way you should, but you're acting the way that you're meant to, right? And we can begin to allow ourselves to show up more fully. And I think that's the first step to self-love is self-knowledge. So self-discovery. And then next, amplifying inner guidance. Energetic work is great for that, for turning up the intuition, getting quiet, getting still enough to hear your own inner voice speak or to slow down enough to feel the pull or the nudge or the ping, and learning what those feel like or sound like or what that means to you. And then I help my clients learn to navigate themselves. I don't want to give them the answers. Quite frankly, I don't know the answers.
Yeah.
The answers are within.
Yeah.
But I can help arm them with the understanding of how to work with their own inner guidance. And then lastly, embodiment, which is essentially putting into practice everything from those first 3 steps. How do you show up as the version of you that you're meant to be? How do you show up as the version of you that already has that vision that you had in mind, right? You get to become them by just beginning to walk around as them. Like, what can you do in your daily life? What can you do today that the version of you that already has it would have done? So we work on that finally.
I love that process. So beautiful. And I really love the fusion of like you basically being like, I was so inspired by all of these spiritual practices and did my own work. And then I went and got my like master's in psychology. And this is like what it's come into, which is so cool. I can't even imagine. You've probably helped so many people. It's crazy. You said something that I want to dig a little bit deeper in, which is the idea of the person who has just the big, crazy, beautiful vision or thing that they want, but they feel like they can't claim it. That is so real.
Yeah.
So many people feel that, like that like big AF vision. You're like, but like, I don't even like, I kind of like can't even look at it because it might be too much for me to handle. Where do we begin with that? I'm thinking of the listener here. I'm thinking of myself here, right? Like, what is a great place to start when you feel that way?
First, letting yourself just play in that possibility, which is easier said than done. But like, what if you just put aside, again, like put aside the how, put aside the limitations that are coming up just for a moment, and just allow yourself to fully feel into what it is that your heart is desiring. Like, write it down, journal it, imagine it in your mind, just like play in the energy of it, because our dreams are our dreams for a reason. Nothing would be put in your heart, in your head, that wasn't there for you to realize. And I truly believe that. And I've seen that for so many of my clients and for myself. Mm-hmm. So if you can just suspend the judgment, allow yourself to play in that possibility. And then there's many exercises you can do around kind of breaking through that limitation. One that I love is simple. Write down your fears. Like, okay, so if I was to actually consider claiming this vision, this dream I have, what are all the things that are scaring me about it? And just truly like listing them out. Sometimes we're so afraid to go into, when the fear comes up, like you said, we just hide and we're like, oh no, okay, I'm done with this vision. I don't know. And what if we actually just get clear? What if we zoom out and we list out and we look at the fears? And then you can actually, with a higher level of consciousness, say, oh, okay, I see why they exist. I see where these might have come from. And I can choose to actually reframe them all. So then you can go back down your list and you can offer a rebuttal or a reframe or a so what statement, right? And literally face those fears in the face. I had a client recently that I was working with, and he has these big creative dreams. He's very talented. And he was kind of afraid to jump all the way into the creative sphere versus doing the more like corporate professional route that he was on. And it was so funny because he starts listing the fears and he's like, well, what if somebody sees my bit and then they don't take me seriously in the professional world? And it's so funny because part of his talent is comedy too. Sure. And so when he would write the fears down, then he would look at them and then he would have these like hilarious comedic responses. He's like, well, nobody's even looking at my resume anyway. So what does it matter? And it was so funny to just help him through that process.
Yeah.
We can kind of desensitize ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
Even my husband and I do this worst case scenario planning. He's an entrepreneur, runs 2 8-figure companies. And sometimes when he's like been ready to take big risks with the business, like, and we say like, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? Like we had this discussion recently. Okay, if we sign as a guarantor for your new project, an $8 million guarantor, what's the worst that'll happen? We'll lose our house, we'll lose all our stuff, and we'll move in with your mom in Santa Barbara. If that's actually the worst possible case, we're not going hungry.
Yeah.
We're not going to end up on the streets.
Right.
And not that I think that that's going to happen.
But I think it's in everyone's head.
But I think if you get it out of your head and you actually stare that worst fear, the worst possible thing that could happen from this in the face, sometimes it's not as scary as you really think, right? I'm like, so what? I saw an ad for a cruise that came out after Trump was elected that said, go on a 4-year cruise around the world. It was like, escape America, go on a 4-year cruise around the world. It's like $100,000. I'm like, babe, we'll just do that. No problem. Sell the house, buy a couple tickets. Like, it's no big deal.
All-inclusive food.
Yeah. So anyway, be willing to pull the curtain back on those fears, and maybe they're not as scary as you think.
Yeah, that is stellar advice. And that comes from, honestly, like cognitive behavioral therapy too.
Yes.
Which is very, very cool. But I think that's so true. And I constantly am doing like those same games in my head as well. I'm like, okay, get it out of your head, because it's like, it's just perpetuating on a loop. Throw it on some paper and realize, like, if shit hits the fan, you have like these skills to fall back on, or like whatever, right? And so I think like always knowing you have your own back is just such a cool thing. I also do this thing, Grace, where if I'm feeling doubtful, let's say, because I think there are moments like when you think of the big dream, right? Like there are days where you're like, yes, I believe in it and I can't like wait to share it with the world. There are other days you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like I am just not feeling it today. And I always say when I'm in those kind of like lower dips, I'm like, don't trust the opinion of maybe your lower self or your tired self, right? Like make sure that when I'm needing really inspirational or whatever, motivational decision making, that I'm coming from that place of my higher self. And some days I'm just not always as tapped in there, and that's okay.
Yes.
But like to remind myself, maybe don't always believe what like lower vibrational child self is thinking.
I love that you're saying that. I oftentimes call it the inner critic versus the higher self. You can call it whatever you want, right? Lower self, like shadow self, but absolutely. And when you can know yourself enough to know which voice is which and to be able to discern, that's when you really become a master of your own psyche. Because exactly right. You can choose and say, oh, this is the voice of my inner critic. Ah, yes, I hear you. Of course. And the inner critic is always going to tell you why you shouldn't, can't. It's the voice of the limitation and the fear. It's the ego that doesn't want you to mess up and look stupid, right? But we also have a voice that we all have access to. It's just we have to be willing to get quiet enough and to create space for it to speak. And that's the voice of the higher self. And the higher self knows our highest potential. It's connected. It's part of God, infinite universe, and it knows our infinite ability. It's like the sky is the fucking limit, and you can do any of these dreams we put in your mind. It's for you to accomplish. And the higher self will be the one like on those good days revving you up, but you can also invite it in on the bad days. You just have to be willing to do so. I actually have an exercise on this. If you want, I can send it to you and we can link it for the audience. It's like a little bundle, but like a guided exercise that has you listen to the inner critic, call upon the higher self, and sort of get them. They have like a conversation. Anyway, it's really powerful. I would love to share it with you.
Yes. Okay, we'll link it in the show notes, you guys. Thank you for sharing that. And I kind of would love to go a little bit into this because I think that when I think to burnout, when I think to the shoulds, I think a lot to kind of the maybe more like masculine energetics of career and a bit of like that kind of 24-hour go system. And I've seen you speak a lot to kind of more of that feminine flow. And I would love to hear a little bit more about really the power of that and where you see that playing into still being able to follow your dreams and maybe challenging the rhetoric of you have to just elbow your way through life.
Yes. So our feminine energy as a society has been very suppressed, and we have been largely operating heavily in the masculine. I mean, the first women that were highly successful and sort of in the rooms where the men were, they got there by having to compete with the men. They had to play by the men's rules. And that meant being too far in their masculine, the hustling, the grinding, I don't know what you said about using your elbows, but whatever that is, right? And they did that to kind of like prove that they could be as good as the man. But there's a new era that we're on the brink of. And in this new era, the female leader, she's not a woman in man's clothing, operating as a masculine CEO. She is truly embodied in her feminine, and she is leading in a new way, which is tapped into her heart, her spirit, which is not overworking and burning out, which is operating with the proper teams and resources for collaboration, just totally separating from this idea of some sort of linear relationship between our effort and productivity and our value. The feminine knows that the value is in your beingness.
Yes.
Who you are. It's not about what you do. And I think the more that we bring that divine feminine back in, we are on the brink of a new era of what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And the women have the chance to lead the way.
I know. Oh, I got like my eyes glazed over for a second there because I was just like, fuck, I wanted Harris to win so badly. I wanted that so badly. I was so ready for that, like just that feminine energy. But listen, things play out as they do. And sometimes maybe things happen in opposite ways to still have similar outcomes of tapping into those energetics.
And quite frankly, a lot of the women, I mean, speaking of this, a lot of the female politicians also have had to, it was a world they were coming up in that they had to operate toe for toe with the men and maybe were leaned into their masculine. It's funny, this is when we call women, you know, they say when women are powerful and stern, they're like a bitch. And for a man, they would be ambitious and a leader. And when the woman acts that way, we call her a bitch. But I will be very excited to see, I don't know that we have like a perfect example that I can think of, but I'm very excited to see that this new era of female politicians that can actually stay in their feminine authenticity rather than the competing against the men. And perhaps we're waiting for that female president.
Yeah, perhaps.
Perhaps.
I think it's just so beautiful to tap into that feminine flow because I've even had kind of my own arc with it as well, where I just realized the second that I actually started slowing down a bit, started doing things at my own cyclical pace, I realized that things just didn't feel like I was swimming upstream as hard, and I could still achieve the same things just on my timeline and in my way, and realizing, oh, I don't have to rush like hell to get somewhere super fast. Like I can kind of do this on my own timeline, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think this is why there's also this resurgence of women, speaking of like in the manifestation world, following the lunar cycle. And like women are really tapping back into, new moon practices and full moon practices. Okay, we as women, we operate on this monthly cycle that is literally like the cycles of energy that our whole being goes through. It's like, imagine the 4 seasons of the year. We are moving through each of those in 1 month cycle. So our hormones, I mean, we have video here. Our hormones like go on this crazy, depending on what chemical you're looking at in our body, this crazy wave pattern. And this is very different from the way that hormones act in the man's body. Men, they have essentially the same burst of hormones every day at the same time, every day for the rest of their lives. So as long as they go to sleep on time, wake up in the morning, they are going to have the same burst of testosterone at the same time every day forever. This is why when we talk about the grinding and the working forever, like it's a very masculine concept. They have this sort of steady ability to output. Women, we weren't made that way.
No.
We were made to build up to this crescendo of creative power and energy and magnetism, and then we crescendo back down, and we have these peaks and these valleys every single monthly cycle. So we feel very different day to day. And for a woman to expect to output the same amount of work on day 1 of her cycle as day 14, as day 20 is just literally insane.
Yeah.
It's not possible to do that and to sustain our health and well-being. It's only a matter of time before we burn out. That is why I believe women are more susceptible to burnout than men. And that's what the science shows as well, that women are burning out faster and more often than the men.
Yeah.
It's why I see a lot of the women I'm speaking to these days, especially as they're either preparing to start their families or have new families, talk about that new era. They are like, what the actual fuck? Like, how am I supposed to do it all? I'm supposed to succeed in my profession and my career and be, working 8 to 6 every day, Monday through Friday for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And be a mom in all the other hours of the day and take care of kids and somehow take care of myself and my health and my well-being and eat right and work out. It's like, how is it literally possible?
Yeah.
And it's not really possible for a woman in her divine feminine to do it all that way.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is possible for us to create a new way of living, of working, of leading that is serving of our own cycles. And that is the movement that I am so excited to help bring forth.
Yes, I love it. I'm subscribing.
Yes, we need you.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think it's just like, it's kind of gotten a little bit out of hand here.
Yes.
It's like, we got to reel it in. And I think it's nice to see like it's happening before us. So that's so cool. I wanted to get to that point that you had mentioned at the beginning of kind of some of the interconnection you had mentioned with sex. And what was it you had said?
Yeah, well, I had this thought.
We put a pin in it.
Yeah, the thing we put a pin in. So it was funny because, well, you talk about sex on here, right?
Yes,
okay.
All the time.
Okay. So I mentioned this to actually a client and friend at one point, and she was like, I don't think you should say that. Okay. And just as a precursor. And I was like, no, but you know what I mean? And she goes, yeah, but I don't know if you should say that. And I've been thinking about it ever since. And so because you talk about sex here, I want to unpack this.
Yes.
Okay. I've never spoken about this before publicly.
Let's do it.
Okay. So when I am using Reiki, when I'm giving Reiki, when I'm receiving Reiki, which is a form of energy healing. And really what it's doing is tapping into our source of the divine energy. It's very feminine. So like literally to me, it feels like channeling through this like river of divine feminine, healing, abundant, loving energy into the room, my clients, my body, right into whatever space. Yeah. So something amazing happens when you're receiving Reiki. Oftentimes it sort of precipitates a mystical experience or, a spiritual awakening experience, or you can call it different things, but that felt visceral experience of profound connection and oneness. And I mean, truly like that blissed out state, right, of ecstasy. And it's funny because when I'm giving Reiki to somebody, performing Reiki, I'm literally like holding them with my hands. And it's like when I'm really in the flow, I lose the boundary between my hand and their body. And it's like we're totally joined and merged. And that's how it works, right? We're returning to this oneness that is our true essence and truly the way things work behind the scenes. And we have this illusion that we're separate, but we're really just a cloud of energy that is so condensed that it looks and feels like matter. But really, like when you're in the flow, it's almost this merging between me and them, or me with God, with the universe, whatever you believe to be bigger than us. And I told a client, a friend once, that to me, it felt like the intimacy of after sex. Have you ever felt that after sex?
Yes,
when
course.
You're just like totally melted.
Like the afterglow.
The afterglow, right? And you're like, maybe you're like lying on your lover and it's almost like you like melt together and you almost, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a Reiki master, but like if I have my hand on his chest, it's like the line between my hand and his chest disappears. And, she told me, maybe you shouldn't say that because people are going to think that you're a sex worker or whatever. I'm like, no. But it's because sex brings us and is an opportunity for sacred union, right? It's elevating us to these highest levels of consciousness. The bliss, the ecstasy, the oneness. These are the highest level experiences that we have as humans. And we have the opportunity to go there through sex with, a divine counterpart, with a soulmate lover. Sex is a spiritual act. I mean, you are truly merging body, mind, heart, and soul, and it is sacred. And it's honestly bringing us to the same places that energetic work is.
Yes.
So anyway, my taboo story that I will tell here that I had never before told.
No, I love it. And I think like, it's so funny. You're like, this is so taboo. I'm like, oh my God, like you don't even know how deep we go on this show. So I'm like, you're just scratching the surface.
Okay.
But one of the things that I thought of as you were speaking was really just like the potential of orgasmic energy. Like it is like that pleasure and then like that veil. And I can understand how that transcends into all different forms of body work. And orgasmic energy isn't just like sexual orgasms. It lives and breathes in so many different spaces. Yeah. And it's just that blissed out ecstasy that we can get to in so many different ways.
And Reiki is so gentle. It's almost like, honestly, it's almost more like you skip to just like the orgasm, post-orgasm. Like you're just like already there. It's like there's no work to get there. If you've ever tried breath work, which I actually love, breath work to me feels total orgasmic energy. It's like you're like breathing and you're like working up to it. And then eventually you kind of break through and you have this like, Reiki is like the very end of that, where you just get to lay and receive and you're just like already in that post-sex glow, as you said.
Yeah, totally.
Which is really special.
We talk a lot about like with the monthly manifestation journal, like I talk a lot about the concept of like desire being this very interconnected thing that is deeply linked to sex and the divine feminine and the cyclical nature of how one operates in the female body, but then how it's also deeply connected to our goals and where we want to go with life and what we're calling in for ourselves. It's all that same energetic. Yeah. It was so funny. I recently was on someone else's podcast and like she finished the show. She like paused it. She's like, so I'm going to send you the show notes here because you're going to write a book about this. I was like, thank you so much. She's like, I'm holding you accountable. So yeah, I see it being so potent.
Yeah. And speaking of the desire to receive, that when you said that, it means so much on so many levels to me, because the heart of the feminine energy is receiving.
Which is so hard to do.
You have to relearn it, or rather decondition to get back to it. But receiving, being in the state of receiving, the desire to receive. And this is so meaningful to me because it's like in Reiki, literally what we do is we receive to channel the Reiki through. I'm receiving Reiki from beyond me. It's not coming from me. It's coming from the universe, from divine source, and through me into the world. So I have to receive in order to give it, to share it. Mm-hmm. And also Kabbalah. I'm a student of Jewish mysticism. The word Kabbalah means to receive. And it's about how our entire purpose and meaning as humans on earth is to receive from the light of the divine, the creator, God. And the only way that we can constantly receive, is there any way that you could constantly receive? If we're a finite vessel, so imagine you're a finite vessel like a cup, and all you want out of life, truly, like the deepest real fulfillment is just to continually receive more and more enlightenment, abundance, love. We're going to eventually reach a capacity, right?
Yeah.
So they teach that the only way to continually receive is to continually give away as well. So anyway, that concept means so much to me for many reasons, but
yeah. And I think I like that picture you painted, because I think sometimes we look at it in the sense of like, well, it's one or the other. And what you just almost explained was like the cyclical nature of how it works and how it plays into one another. So there are a lot of women who sit there and feel guilty being like, well, I can't be the receiver, but recognizing, oh, wait, it actually is like all interconnected in the same process.
I literally think of, it's this age-old terms that people use, like you have to fill your cup first, right? And how many times have we heard that? But to me, I'm imagining, like, imagine that there is a waterfall, an endless, infinite waterfall of energy, of love, of abundance. And you get to like sit yourself underneath it and like be filling up. And then you can then spout and fill up your kids and your husband, everything. And like if you remove yourself from that waterfall, you only have your finite capacity and you're going to run dry really, really quick. Mm-hmm. So for women, it is actually part of our duty. If you want to speak about traditional gender roles of being a woman's job as caring for her husband, for her family, that's in a very traditional, like Judy Cleaver kind of way. I also like to go back to the traditional, in Judaism, the woman is the spiritual leader of the household. Mm-hmm. we have the connection to God innately, and we are responsible for channeling in that energy into the home and, filling the cups of the husband and the kids. And so it's not just our privilege, but it's actually our duty to keep our cup full and to be in direct connection so that we can be the best partners, the best mothers, the best leaders, the best, anything that you want to be.
You talk a lot about being the own CEO to your life. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah. For me, that means I am radical about where I spend my time, what I outsource, bringing people in to support things. When you are the CEO, your job is to be the quarterback for a larger team to accomplish goals. Mm-hmm. It's not your job to do it all. And I think that this is an opportunity for women to step into the role of CEO of their life. In my household, we have a full-time family assistant household manager that helps my household run because I run 2 businesses, have 2 little girls, 2 and 4. My husband runs 2 businesses. And so, to some people that would be insane. They're like, what do you mean you're going to pay someone $150,000 a year out of your household? I'm like, what do you mean? But I have infinite earning potential. I don't want to bog myself down with, unnecessary amount of laundry and dishes and things that I don't need to do. Also, especially as a mother, anything I can outsource in my business to then free up time to then spend quality time with my kids in the ways that I want to. So really just always radically thinking about what can I take off my own plate and outsource to others to free up energy for what can only be done by me. Mm-hmm. That's what I see CEOs doing all the time, and that's what I try to do in my life.
Yeah. I think there was somewhere that you had said, this is what you witness CEOs doing. So why not apply it to how you operate in your own space?
Yeah. We all can. You can be the CEO of your life, no matter what it is, Think about what tasks am I bad at, drain me, take a long time that don't need to be me, and then figure out how to outsource those things to other people. And the amazing thing happens is you free up more of your own time and energy for those high value ads, right? Mm-hmm. If you run your own business, it gives you time back for the business development, the strategy. And I mean, you understand, you have people helping you out with editing and whatever so that you don't have to, because how much of a time suck would that be?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and I've been there and done it before trying to do it all. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not serving you guys as the listener. I'm not serving myself. My time is not well spent. I know I can do it.
Right.
But it's let me take that time and actually move the needle in a way better way.
Yeah. And there are other people that love to do that and they can do it so much faster. And that's what they feel made to do. Right. Yeah. So we can just be radical about those things and unapologetic.
Yeah.
And I think especially for women, especially for moms, sometimes there's this guilt that comes in of the feeling, again, we have to do it all. Mm-hmm. It's okay, babe, you can do it all, but you can't do it all yourself. Mm-hmm. You can be the CEO of it all, and then you're going to need your VP of household and VP in your business and VP of, you can't truly hold everything, but you can oversee it all.
Yeah. And I think it's how do we create that support system for our life? And I know we're speaking in a monetary sense, but you've got your doctors and caretakers. You've got your close friends that you can call when you need to just offload something. Maybe you've got a therapist that's part of your kind of CEO ecosystem, which I think is so cool. And you can be scrappy with it too. I mean, there's so many ways that you can reach out and get a little extra help. One of the things I'm thinking of, I use all the time is I'm I should be sponsored for saying this, is Fiverr or some of those other things that people are just looking to pick up little gigs to maybe they're really good at copywriting. If you're writing something, you can send it to someone to look at and give a red line edit, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways, or you need a quick logo. Okay, pay someone $50.
Yeah.
Don't die on a hill if you don't know how to use Adobe software.
Yeah. And I even think about, even if it's in your household, maybe you freaking hate the laundry. There's laundry services that will pick up your laundry for $50 or something and at your house and return it. And I mean, it's such a small thing, but it just means you can, in a world that there's infinite things to do and we never have enough time, how can you be smarter with your time?
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I think work smarter, not harder. And I think too, I'd love to tie this back to maybe chasing your dreams. and figuring out the action steps that you want to take when you're following that. And I think this fits itself really nice into that entire system that you speak of, which is like, sometimes you just got to take that larger thing, that big manifestation, and boil it down into like, what are those smaller manifestations that are getting me there? And I kind of like the idea of, you know, if I put my CEO hat on, what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is, when we have these big visions and we're invited to be more intuitively guided, which is something that we're not super used to, the thing about how our intuition works, or our inner guidance or inner voice, whatever you want to call it, it actually can't really tell you all of the steps to get to you where you want to go. That's what logic is for. So logic can make a plan from point A to point B. Intuition, all it knows is the next step. And this is actually one of the single biggest secrets, unlocks. You want to manifest your vision, be willing to take that first step, even without knowing what the whole pathway is. Because the magic of it is once you take the first step, the next step will be shown. We just don't get to know it all ahead of time. But I love what you said about being smart about, who could you talk to? Who could you hire? Who could help? If you don't know where to begin, who in your world does know where to begin, right? Like,
there's a couple of steps ahead.
Yeah. If you want to start a business, like, who can you call up that started a business recently and just chit chat for 20 minutes? Like, spending 20 minutes of your time with someone can be so deeply powerful, impactful. You know, the work of, do you know Lacey Phillips and To Be Magnetic?
Yeah.
She's a neighbor of mine, actually, just up the street. But I love that, how she really defined this concept as expanders, people that were just, a couple steps ahead of you. And even just having a conversation with them opens up your subconscious to what is possible and begins to shed light on that dark path of like, oh, wait, maybe this is the next step that I can take.
Yeah, I love that so much, guys. Like, I'm calling people all the time. I'm like, oh, so I have a friend who fundraised just like $1 million. Okay, let me go talk to her on how to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just like tapping into that network. But I love as well, like you were saying about your intuition, because, and I've caught myself here many times, like the overwhelm of wanting to know A to Z. And like, guys, I'm so victim to this. Like, you're probably going to laugh with me too, because like New Year will come. I'll like spread out a whole sheet of paper. I'll be like, this is what's going to happen. And this is exactly how it's going to happen. And like, I'll want to mind map every little step of the way. And it's like, sometimes you only get like 3 steps ahead, right? You can have that bigger vision in front of you, but just like kind of operating a few little steps ahead and learning and kind of pivoting from there and allowing things to be revealed to you. I mean, how boring would life be if we knew like our final destination? You're like, what a snooze.
When you do it that way, it's the way you're describing of a couple steps and then seeing what unfolds. You're truly in co-creation with the universe.
Yeah.
Because when we try to map it all out A to B, that's limited by what our little brain, our logical reasoning can figure out. And that's actually so much smaller than the magic of what the universe can bring to you. And the chance encounter or the amazing opportunity that could drop in if you actually open up and just say, okay, I'm going to take the next inspired action step that is available to me. And then I'm going to kind of like pause and see, okay, what's up here? What do you have to give me? Like, what can I receive? Right. Yeah. And you get to play, interplay, dance with the universe.
Yeah.
And that's the feminine way of creating.
Yeah. I love that. What are, not to be like full Gabby Bernstein, the universe has your back, but what are ways that you practice and work on that trust muscle of knowing the universe has me, right? Like, I'm thinking of even if you're working towards something and you're maybe feeling like a little shaky about something, what are the things that you go back to remind yourself like, I'm in?
Good question. I connect a lot through journaling. It's just like a place that I feel in flow. I don't know that that's really like, it just kind of brings me back to the soul of what's going on and kind of cuts through for me the bullshit and the chatter of the mind, I guess. But other things, speaking of Gabby Bernstein, love her, have been a fan forever. And I mean, you can ask for a sign, for example. I mean, sometimes in the morning, I'll just say like, show me what I'm meant to do today. Show me who I'm meant to hang out today. One thing I love, this is actually going back to that connections idea that I have been doing a lot this past year, is like sometimes at the beginning of the week when I'm thinking of what I am supposed to do and the big hot items that I want to work on, I even just say like, who am I meant to connect with? Like, who am I meant to reach out to? And it could be that they need help. They need something from me, or that they have something that I need, right? And I'll just trust. I'll have 2, 3, 4 people pop right into my mind.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, or not that crazy, is every time I text one of them and I say, hey, you popped into my mind. Would you want to get coffee or something? They go, oh my God, I was just thinking about you, or I've been wanting to reach out to you, or right?
Yeah.
So you can literally ask and you will literally receive, right? You could say, show me what the next step is, and then just be mindful and aware and look around and see what cues you're given.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. That is just so special. And that's also definitely a huge part of my practice as well, of just being like, okay, all right, like, what do you have for me?
Yeah.
I always write, show me how good it can get in my journal.
I love that. Yeah. No, it's really good.
Yeah. Show me how good it can get.
Yes.
You know, my mind is here. Show me how it can get even bigger and better.
Yes.
I'm ready to receive that
Yes.
and kind of have my mind blown in that way.
Yes. I love that.
Okay. My final question for you. What is currently on your bedside table at the moment?
My Aura Ring charger. Well, now speaking of women, I should be like sponsored by Natural Cycles because I use that.
Yes.
And I have the Aura Ring because it does the connection, but that's been very powerful for me as a woman, being off hormonal birth control for like 10 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
But respect if you take it and it works for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And I always have my journal and my pen next to my bed. And what have I been reading? Oh, I just got my new favorite book. Now I'm going to be a plug for her, but I don't even care because I literally love her. Do you know Kathy Heller?
Yes.
Okay, she just released her book, Abundant Ever After, I believe it's called. Anyway, I went to her.
What is this? Kathy Heller. She had the podcast.
Yes.
Her podcast.
Yes. Podcaster.
Yes.
But anyway, she just released a book, and I had the pleasure of meeting her at a friend hosted her book launch party, and I heard her speak, and I was like, oh my God, I love you. And she just was really describing the way that I see the universe and meaning and purpose and all the things like so succinctly. So I've been reading that, and it's been such a nice way to tap in. Like, oh, well, magic of the universe. I don't know. I don't feel that magical right now in this big dream. And am I going to be able to do it? And actually opening a book, whether it's like self-help or something spiritual or mystical or just something that reminds you of that energy of what it is that you believe about the universe or believe that is possible for you, opening up, reading even a paragraph or two can like really help bring you back into the energy.
Yeah, even like a line of poetry, or I've recently rediscovered like my love for fantasy. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot. I was like kind of in a rut, not in a rut, but my reading rut was just so self-help, so business, so masculine oriented, which is really fulfilling at times. But I was like, dang, I really just need to go into a different world. And that changed everything for me.
I love that.
Shit, I love reading.
No, I know, right? And fiction and just like fun stories. My husband makes fun of me because sometimes I'm reading like romantic, like whatever. Or you know what I loved was, remember the movie Crazy Rich Asians?
Yes.
Okay, well, they have 3 books and I devoured those. Like, I thought it was like a guilty pleasure read where it's just like,
call those potato chip books.
Okay, yes. Yeah. So it was that. And he's just like, why are you so obsessed with this? I'm like, this is so fucking fun. Like, I haven't read a book that was so fun in so long. Yeah. And so, yeah, totally feel that.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, Grace, thank you for joining me. This was such an amazing conversation. I'm going to like find you in Topanga.
Oh, please.
I'm going to like appear on your property.
No, let me know and come out and stay. Yeah. And if you want to do a session but you can stay, have a little solo retreat out at our property.
I would love to. Yeah. Okay, please drop I know you have a couple amazing things in the works that are gearing up for this December and for the new year. So share kind of where we can connect with you and what maybe the listeners can tap into if they're wanting to explore your work.
Yes. If any of this calls to you and intrigues you, I'm holding a complimentary masterclass. It's called Liquid Gold. It's all about tapping into our inner wellspring and pouring magic into our lives. So really awakening that feminine magnetism that we have within. And it's going to be on December 10th. So I'll drop the link for it if you want to sign in. And then I'm going to be announcing something really exciting that I have coming for next year that I'm so excited about. More to come on that, but it's going to be having to do a lot with the methodology that we talked about and basically an exclusive intimate container for women.
I love that. So amazing. And where can we find you on like Instagram?
Oh, yeah. I'm on Instagram at @forwardwgrace, forward with Grace. And my retreat space is Topanga Canyon Oasis, and you can find us there.
So cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Such a nice combo. I loved it.
Bye, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Bedside podcast. I hope you loved this episode as much as we did making it. If you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, or if you just want to chat, don't hesitate to reach out to us at The Bedside on Instagram and thebedside.co online. You can also find us at By the Bedside on TikTok. To stay updated on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your preferred platform. And if you found this episode valuable, I would so greatly appreciate if you could leave us a rating, a review, text it to a friend, share it to your Instagram stories. Let's get this message out there loud and clear. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.